Traditional leadership in South Africa is still dependent on government. Traditional leaders get a stipend from government. By this system, you can't exactly speak against government or keep the person who's giving you money to survive, keep them accountable.
A lot of the problems that we experience today are facilitated by a particular political system that is highly centralized and that naturally creates government dependency. Would you say that's an accurate way of describing it?
Sitting in Zolo as a community and waiting for somebody in Pretoria to take decision on behalf of our community in Zolo, it does not make sense. Absolutely not make sense. We need to decentralize power down to the people. In fact, how we can rebuild, if we have to rebuild South Africa, we have to rebuild South Africa from bottom up.
Why would you say is self-governance important?
This is why we see the issues that we see in South Africa today is that we shift the responsibility and accountability, which is creating poverty mindset, entitlement. Because I have a victim mentality because guess what? Somebody in Pretoria is going to come and solve my problems. The system is creating that type of culture and it's taught from generation to generation and it becomes a vicious cycle.
Princess Bhelekazi, it's a great honor and privilege to have you with us in the studio. Thank you very much for joining us on the Pioneer Podcast.
Thank you so much. I have to congratulate you. This is visionary of you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. There's so much that I want to talk to you about your community, your people, your history, which is very interesting, about your role, and then, of course, something that is very important to us at Lex Libertas, but also that you are very passionate about is this whole theme of self-governance and decentralization. But before we go into that, I just want to link up to a conversation we just had outside as you arrived at the studio, about your patriotism for the Eastern Cape, which is where your community is based. And it really resonated with me as someone who grew up in the north of South Africa, around the town of Tzaneen. And so I'm very, just because that's where I grew up and that's what I know, I'm still very patriotic about the Limpopo province, but I'm also very saddened by developments in that province, corruption, mismanagement, and so forth. And so you talking about the Eastern Cape reminded me of myself. But so maybe just explain it for us. Why are you so patriotic about the Eastern Cape?
Firstly, because I was born in the Eastern Cape, and the Eastern Cape should be the Texas of South Africa. We have vast land, we have beautiful people, we're a coastal province, and I see the poverty, in the Eastern Cape, yet the land is just sitting unused and unutilized. And just seeing people migrating to the Western Cape for better opportunities, it really, really destroys my heart. And the Eastern Cape has a great destiny. It has produced intellectuals. We have a great heritage, great history, and we should be using that at our disposal to promote the Eastern Cape. The Eastern Cape has, if I may say that, I think the issue is we have bad leadership in the Eastern Cape, and that needs to change.
But also the Eastern Cape is so I want to say two things. One is, at least from my perspective, of the 9 provinces in South Africa, it's the one that you hear about the least. It's the least spoken of province. Even the Northern Cape I hear more about than the Eastern Cape, but also it's an incredibly beautiful province. And I've been there a few years ago. I don't go there that often, but just to spend time in the Eastern Cape is really something, and I would really encourage people to go. And in that sense, I think you're very lucky to have a people and a nation or a community in the Eastern Cape. But yeah, it's really remarkable, and I think you're right. I think there's much that could be done to improve conditions in the Eastern Cape. Okay, so I want to talk a bit about yourself personally, but also your people. And I'm not going to try to explain your history because you can do that much better. But I want you to tell us who your community are so that people can understand. But I want to start with this just one little section, which I think is quite remarkable about your history. The story of Nkosi Jamangile, who was born in 1828, and he fought in the War of the Axe, which was the seventh border war, as it was known, or the Xhosa War. And the reason why I think that's remarkable is, as an Afrikaner who grew up in the north, the sixth Xhosa War was actually one of the most important reasons that sparked the Great Trek. And so that is a very important part of Afrikaner history, is the as we call it, the border wars or the Xhosa Wars. But from your perspective, your community was also involved with that. So tell us a little bit about it.
Of course, I was born in the 80s, so...
You can't remember it. No.
Yeah. So history tells us that Nkosi Jamangile was involved in these two wars, right? Which is the seventh, I think it's the seventh and the eighth frontier wars, right? And one of them being the War of the Axe. And we are told that we were fighting on the side of the colonial government.
Of the British.
Of the British, yes, at the time, and against the Amaxhosa kingdom, right? Of course, there were other nations, local nations that were fighting with the English at that time, and with that, I believe that this is what it said when other people argue that this is how the other nations were able to get their lands from the colonial government at that time. I don't know how truthful that is, but I just see that Jamangile was very, I think he was a visionary, right? He was able to read the room to say which side for his people, for the interest of his people. And I think that's being leadership. Maybe somebody can argue with me and say we were traitors. I'm not sure, but I would have done exactly the same thing if I was in his shoes at the time, because in both the wars, the English won. The English actually won the wars, right? So he was actually on the winning side, meaning that Amabele, Jamangile are always on the winning side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's remarkable about this, I think an important underlying point is about South African dynamics, in the sense that there's this narrative. One narrative about South Africa is that actually we're all just the same. We're all just individuals and we're all just South Africans, as if there are no cultural differences, which of course isn't true. But then the other narrative is that South Africa is just a country with different race groups, and all white people are the same and all black people are the same, and the color of your skin determines your identity. And this story actually says that that's not quite true, that there's important differences in cultural dynamics within race groups as well. Would you agree with that?
Listen, I wouldn't be here today if that was the truth, you know. I believe in a tribe of people. What is a tribe of people? People that share common values, right? And it will be a lie to say that I do not see color. You are an Afrikaner male. That's a fact. And that does not mean that I am racist by saying color, or you by saying color, you are being racist. I think a lot of South Africans, we are too emotional and too race-based. And it really filters down to the politics and the everyday and how we see each other. And another issue that I have, that there's a lot of comparison, and that when we start comparing people, we actually create envy amongst people and mistrust amongst people, instead of seeing how can we complement each other. And the differences that we see amongst these cultural communities, it's just the way, it's a mindset. It's a way of thinking. So this is why we perhaps see other communities thriving better than other communities. It's not to say that because you are white, you are doing better than the black person in the Eastern Cape or in Limpopo. Life is about how you think. It's literally a battle of the mind. It's a mindset.
Tell us a bit about your community today. Where is it? How could we describe the community and so forth?
So from Nkosi Jamangile to now, we have been in an independent community for what? About 147 years, right? And it's a small community of, I think, about 20,000 hectares of land. You're looking at 7.2, about 7,200 people that living on the land. It's a rural community in a rural town, and a lot of people mostly are probably teachers, policemen, and of course, I think with the younger generation, people migrating, going to other provinces, you probably get to see people who have careers outside being teachers. But when looking at my community and our royal family, we looked at how we can actually shift traditional leadership in South Africa. Yeah. Traditional leadership in South Africa is still dependent on government. Traditional leaders get a stipend from government. So it's actually creating a dependency culture, being dependent on the government. And by this system, you can't actually exactly speak against government or keep the person who's giving you money to survive, keep them accountable. So we see this cycle of people that now are sitting on land, they're living in poverty, they're stagnant, they're unable to think for themselves outside government. Right? And so we came up with a system to say, how do we professionalize traditional leadership? One is to empower traditional leaders as leaders so that they could actually lead their communities. One is through education. Two is actually to rethink the whole system. And that is needed, I think, both for, I would say, right across the country. Yeah. We need to rethink how traditional leadership works in South Africa and how traditional communities operate.
It's incredible to hear you say that, because it's something that we value deeply as well, is the recognition that we eventually get to, that the problem is actually the system. It's not just one or two corrupt politicians, or it's not just that the wrong person is doing that. It's that a lot of the problems that we experience today are facilitated by a particular political system that is highly centralized and that naturally creates government dependency. Yeah. And it's very sad, and I think you've described it now to an extent, this almost a vicious circle, especially, and I'm not part of those, well, I'm not in your community, but it does seem to me as an outsider, and you must please correct me if I'm wrong, that what's happening with many of these traditional communities is two things that seem to be contradictory. On the one side, there's this recognition that things aren't working and that in many ways the government is the problem. It's not working because of the government. But then on the other hand, there's this growing dependency on the government. There's getting money from the government. And so there's also this friction that's sort of developing in traditional communities in their relationship with the government. Would you say that's an accurate way of describing it?
Absolutely, and it's because no one is created to be dependent on another system, in the sense that your destiny is in your hands. You should be able to have the freedom to choose and to have choices and to understand that life is about choices. So what I'm trying to say is that sitting in Zolo as a community and waiting for somebody in Pretoria to take decision on behalf of our community in Zolo, it does not make sense. Absolutely not make sense. We need to decentralize power down to the people. In fact, how we can rebuild, if we have to rebuild South Africa, we have to rebuild South Africa from bottom up. We have to rebuild our communities. And it starts by changing. We have to literally change the system. We have to, it's like a do or die situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Otherwise, the friction that we are seeing now, it's going to implode.
And why would you say is self-governance important?
Because as humans, that's how we are wired. We are wired. I think we are wired in that way that governance 101 starts from self-governance in the sense that you've got to love yourself. Right? Loving yourself, taking accountability, taking responsibility. And I think this is why we see the issues that we see in South Africa today is that we shift the responsibility and accountability, which is creating poverty mindset, entitlement. Because I'm sitting down, I have a victim mentality because guess what? Somebody in Pretoria is going to come and solve my problems. That is the mentality. The system is creating that type of culture, and then it gets taught from generation to generation, and it becomes a vicious cycle.
Yeah, and it becomes worse and worse.
Absolutely, and it's not sustainable. And I think this is why, not to disrespect the traditional leaders that are in government. So when government feels threatened, they will give few traditional leaders some positions into government because people need to survive, and so it becomes vicious. It really is a vicious cycle. Yeah, and we lose, and we're starting to see that with that, even within the rural communities, we start to see that we are losing the heritage and the culture. There's an erosion.
Yeah.
That is starting to happen now, where you are seeing RDP houses being built on communal land. That has never happened before. But now you're starting to see that.
But why does that concern you?
It concerns me because, if we're losing heritage, you're losing yourself. You're losing your way of life, because our people, they move from the rural areas going into the urban cities, right? And then they bring in all that culture back into the rural communities, and it becomes a clash of ideas. Rural communities are very conservative in their way of thinking, in their way of doing things. We see now something that it's disgustingly, I hate it. We see young girls, like in daylight, they will go into shops wearing nightgowns. No,
Yeah.
these are the things that you are.
It's a cultural decay.
It decay,
Yeah.
and you're like, where does this come from? Black people are clean. You go to the rural areas, 5 a.m. people are up. They clean they're clean. They're working their land. Black people are not lazy. Go to the rural areas and you'll see. But when you go to the urban areas where you're waiting for the 350, where your government says, I'll give you a free house. It's not happening in the rural communities. You have to take some responsibility. The land is there, but you have to prove yourself. You've got to take some accountability for your life. So this is why I'm saying there's a clash of ideas that you see coming between the urban and the rural communities.
So you're saying the more dependent people become on the government, the more they, in a sense, get sucked into the system,
Absolutely.
the more it eventually erodes their culture.
Absolutely.
And also work ethic
Yes.
and
They
their way
become
of
lazy.
life.
Yeah, they become lazy. And where there's laziness, there's poverty. And where there's entitlement, there's poverty. Where there is entitlement, no one wants to take any accountability. Those three things. If you don't want to take any accountability, you're not a responsible person. You'll never be a responsible person. And you're literally giving over your whole destiny into somebody else to decide for you. And of course, government enjoys this because this is how they stay. Yeah, this is how they stay in power. If our communities, if our communities had to be less dependent on government, that would mean that they're not the votes, less votes for the government. And that's what we need to do. For any government, I'm not just saying, for any government, we cannot have a people that are dependent on government. And this is why I believe that people are frustrated now. And because they are frustrated, and it's easy to blame the other side. So now the shift is, no, we are in this situation because of white people. We are in this situation because of apartheid. We'll blame anything under the sun.
Yeah. It's, okay, so if I were to play devil's advocate now and say, yes, but if your community had more self-governance and neighboring communities had more self-governance and the central government had less power, the consequence would be war. People would start fighting against each other and killing each other. What would your response be to that?
Listen, government has a role to play, right? But it must be limited, right? And I believe that, this is my belief, that the first governance is self-governance, right? If we have to go back to the foundations, we need to go back to the foundations. And I know that not everyone will agree with me, but the foundation is God.
Yeah.
Truly, you don't have to agree with me, but if we want our communities to work and to live in peace, and we want literally like a system that works, we have to go back to the foundation, and the foundation is God.
I want to take a moment to thank you for watching and following the content on this channel. And I also want to encourage you to like this video and to subscribe to this channel to ensure that our audience is broadened. Your role in your community is you are some form of a diplomat. You reach out, you represent your community, and I have to commend you. You are doing incredible work. Every now and then I see your face somewhere in a new interview, or you've done some visit, or you're involved with some project, and it's very inspirational to see you do this. I want to ask you about the Orania visit, because you had a trip to Orania, and which was quite remarkable, and there was a lot of talk about that. But before I say too much, what's your version of what happened, and how did that happen, and what's your perspective?
I think my visit to Orania kind of burst my bubble. I don't know, because I don't know, because maybe the way I was raised, I've never seen such hatred. South Africans they need healing, like literally. I received, not me, my family. I received a lot of threats. People were writing to me. I think I even said I was called blackface, walking with racists, and I wear the title with honor. I literally wear the title with honor. I have to come to a place where I'm not apologetic of how I've been raised, the legacy that my parents have invested in me through blood and sweat. Going to Orania was what an experience. The French media was there, and we had requested them that some of the things they do not share, because it was very authentic, because it was a conversation between people. I met the youngsters. I cried. We hugged. It felt like I was speaking to my own daughter. Every generation always thinks that the other generation is backward, and
Yes.
I met the elders. We spoke about their roles and the wisdom that they carry in them. Listen, there's a lot of politics that a lot of people that do not understand about Orania, and a lot of people felt that I was selling the Orania story. I mean, I went to Orania twice, best fudge, best pecan nuts.
And cook sisters also.
The cooks, let me tell you. And I thought I was being a visionary when I went out to Orania, without knowing that Orania had already had a relationship with a community in the Eastern Cape for the past 11 years. And this is not in the news.
Yeah.
Right? So here I'm thinking that I'm a pioneer, thinking that I'm doing something. No, I wasn't. But one thing that I learned in Orania is a people that have a common vision. And a people who actually go out looking for skilled people who get jobs on merit, not because they are comrades,
Yes.
or they have connections, hardworking, right? Everyone gets their hands dirty. Everyone works. Everyone is accountable. I was very impressed. So I wanted to take the values and say, okay, what can we learn from this community? How can we go back, not just for my community, but how can we go back to the Eastern Cape and the rest of the country? What can we learn? Leave the politics, leave the emotions. There's a lot of emotions and a lot of politics about Orania. Do you have racists in Orania? I'm sure you do. Do I have racists in my community? I'm sure that I do. And I'm saying this on purpose because people ask me, how did you get to Orania? Were you allowed? Black people are not allowed in Orania. How did I get there? I mean, this is nonsense. This is the propaganda that is out there. It's not like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely not like that. And I just want to add this about this whole racism thing. I want to say this. Racism is not a color issue. It's a heart issue.
Wow. Well, what do you mean?
Everything starts in the heart. It's fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the other. We actually have so much in common.
Yeah. Wow. It's incredible. And I want to talk about the propaganda side that you mentioned, because there's a problem with the media, but unfortunately also social media. So it's also the new media, where friction and conflict, it's incentivized to talk about that, but it's not incentivized to talk about cooperation. So the fact that you mentioned, so if Orania had gone to Nyameni and had stolen some things there, it would have been in the news.
Yes.
But if they go there and they cooperate with them, it's not in the news.
Absolutely.
And even this, just as an example, this conversation that we are having, if we have a big fight and we scream at each other and it will be viral and everyone will watch it. But if we talk about the things we agree on, it's not that newsworthy. And it's very unfortunate that it is that way. Also history. So from an Afrikaner perspective, I'm very interested in the stories of cooperation between the Afrikaner people and other communities. And yes, there were wars and there were very famous wars, but there were also so many stories of working together. But even in history, people don't care about cooperation. They care about war and conflict. And that creates a false narrative. It creates a narrative that people are just waiting to take up arms and start killing each other, or people are just waiting for a race war or something. But it's unfortunate that that is the case. I don't know if you have a view as to why that is happening, but it's the question. The more important question is, how do we bridge that? How do we move forward from there?
I think information is very important, right? As you are saying, I did not know of the Mabandla and the Nyameni, right? I didn't know of them. It was Orania that introduced me to them. Can you imagine an Afrikaner community is introducing Amabele to Amabele? How is that possible? When I went to visit in Nyameni, they have a house that they had built for Orania. It's actually called Orania, right in Keskamarhoek, right?
Yeah.
When Orania visits Eastern Cape, is it in the news? No, it's not in the news. When they go to and they actually stay, they actually there's a house for them and their children when they visit. Is this in the news? No, it's not in the news. I'll make another example. When we were trying to develop our land, right, we had to have an area view report that was needed to be done. Guess who did that report for us? AfriForum. Was that in the news? No. Right? But if we had to fight, that would be splashed. So all the good stories are not making it in mainstream media because it does not sell. The good stories do not sell. But anything that has to divide and keep us divided, it will sell because it keeps the politicians in power. This is why it is very important that we move away from the emotions of politics. And with people on ground, actually South Africans get along. They really get along, and people want to get along. We need to break this wall, the barrier, and we can only do that. What conquers? It's love.
Yes. And so maybe just to round off, if we say that decentralization from a sort of political perspective is important, or more important than decentralization, the idea of self-governance or self-responsibility as members of our communities, as individuals, but also as communities. If we agree that that is important, and I think most people do, although it's not part of the narrative, the question is, how do we promote that? How do we promote self-reliance, self-governance, self-responsibility for our communities?
I'll tell you, I think from an historic perspective, anyone who hears decentralization or self-governance thinks of homelands. This is what I've seen. They think, oh, you want to take us back as apartheid.
Yeah.
You see. So I think we need to shift that ideology that it's not taking you back into apartheid. And because of the culture of the governing party or the liberation politics, everything has been centralized. We take decision up, and then it gets, from up down, right? So we need to rethink. Literally, we have to teach people and say, listen, move outside your comfort zone. It's how many years later? Life has changed. Things are shifting. The world is shifting. We've got to rethink how we do things. We need solutions, fresh solutions. And this is how we need to take power back to the people. People need to self-govern. And self-governance does not mean apartheid or we are dividing people again. No, it's not. It's not. It's actually empowering people to take responsibility for their destiny. I usually say that destiny knows no color.
Destiny knows no color. Yeah,
absolutely.
Why do you say destiny? Why the focus on destiny?
Because each person, we are all created in the image of God. Every person has a purpose. And our purpose are not in political parties, right? Each person is this is why I keep on saying, instead of comparison, we need to complement each other. We can learn. We are different, absolutely different. And the difference is there, and we should celebrate our differences and see how we can actually complement each other, because we have a role to play. If I may say, the Afrikaners are very good at structure, right? No, it's a fact. Yeah. And this is why, and this is how you are able to survive, to be resilient, to rebuild yourself no matter what. You get down, you get up, right? It's in there. So how do we, so it's not to say then I'm comparing you to a black person. No, it's the fact that I'm able to see that in another person, it means that I know my identity. It's all about identity, right? And you are able to celebrate the goodness in another person. It means that you know who you are. You know your worthness. I know my worth, right? So by me celebrating you, I'm not looking down on myself. And I think we need to get to that point where that we need to know who we are. And we are more than, if I may say, we are more than our cultures. Literally, we are more than our cultures, because we are literally the image we are the image of God, and God has created us out of love. So this hatred that is out there really needs to be dissolved, and that people need to know, everyone, all cultures have a role and a purpose in South Africa. I'm speaking in the context of South Africa. And it's about time that we stop this nonsense. You do not have to apologize for being a male Afrikaner, and you do not need to apologize for being proud of your heritage. I don't need to be apologetic, right, of who I am. Or there's also this black guilt that if I prosper, I need to be guilty because the rest of the country is behind. No. I'm not here as a spokesperson for black people. Absolutely not. And I'm not standing on behalf of black people. Absolutely not. Yes, I know that I'm brown, but the legacy that I'm living for is for who? It's for my family. I'm a Mabandla.
For your people and your community.
My community.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fantastic. So what you're saying now reminds me of the conversation I recently had with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who is a Somali-born who grew up in a Muslim community, and she actually fled because of an arranged marriage, and she became a Christian. And we recently had a long conversation about South Africa in England, and she was persecuted for becoming a Christian and targeted, and she had received threats, and she said that listening to all these stories about South Africa, what strikes her the most is she thinks the most important thing that needs to happen is people need to return to God. People need to find their Christianity, and that's something that we all have in common. Even though there are cultural differences, we can find each other on that basis, and I think that's very important.
Absolutely. And I also want to add and say that the decay that we see in South Africa, when you self-hate, you will self-sabotage because you have no identity. And this is why we see the decay and the corruption, because people are self-rejecting themselves. So if you are self-rejecting yourself, your decisions that you take will self-sabotage. So we have a people in power who do not know who they are, because that's self-hate. If you're going to be so corrupted, it's self-hatred. They're not going to care about the rest of the people. So it's all about, we need to go back. I will say this again. We need to go back to God. We really, literally, we South Africa needs to go back to the foundations. And that is God.
Yeah. Well, Princess Bhelekazi, thank you very much. It's a great privilege to speak to you. And I really want you to come back to the podcast. We should definitely do a follow-up. It's very inspirational to speak to you and to listen to you. And it also has been, like I said, over the last few years to follow you and to read more, because you talking about these issues have inspired me to learn more about your community and your history. And I hope that we can create some form of a movement for different peoples and nations and communities to respect each other and learn more about each other, because it's only through that we can really find each other and cooperate. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. And I hope that I can also invite you to the Eastern Cape.
That sounds fantastic. Yes,
Yeah.
We'll make a plan.
Well, thank you. I'm really honored. And I honor you. I honor you for the work that you're doing, because it's not easy. But honestly, I honor you and I honor your team behind you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you would like to support this channel and the work that we are doing at Lex Libertas to work toward a more sustainable and a more viable political dispensation for South Africa, I would like to encourage you to sign up as a contributor by clicking on the link in the description.